children as a form of discipline.
Hey, this is the question of Blog Talk Radio Conversation. Tuesdays with Carla Barnhill, parenting expert, who over at themommyrevolution.com, her and her partner have been talking about spanking.
Yes, children.
And they mean it as a form of discipline,
yes,
not as a form of romance.
Right.
So what are you talking about over there with spanking?
Well, I have
to
made...
or not to, or just techniques?
To not to. I've made a case, yeah. The weapon of choice.
I mean, that's a big part. Because when you go to spank, then you have to decide, do you go the route of, do I use my own hand, or do I use an instrument?
An implement.
Implement.
Which implement? And so anyway,
you have no time for this conversation, do you?
No, I do have time for it because it's one that keeps coming up. And we are having... What is he doing? Is he watering the grass? No.
Do you hear that screeching noise?
It's like coming from underneath us.
Well, that's where the water spigot is.
Yeah.
I now refer to him as the renter after tonight. He graduates. The renter, my 18-year-old son, is washing out a cooler.
Good.
Probably from his party. And
all right. Back to me.
You can hear it in these old farmhouses.
Yeah.
Those are just the demons of spanking.
Yeah.
Making that noise.
No, I do have time for it because it continues to be a conversation. And when I was at Christian Parenting today, it was one of the main things that we had readers ask us about. Mm-hmm. What do I do about this? Do I do it? And part of the issue is that spanking has been presented as a tool for Christian parents, that this is non-negotiable, that the Bible says you should spank your children, spare the rod, spoil the child. A verse in the entire Bible pulled out, not used correctly, to make a whole form of discipline.
But how many
mandatory
verses?
For Christian
there's
parents.
Only one verse that says God is love, and people make a big deal out of that one verse.
Yeah, except that the whole story sort of supports that verse.
All right.
Anyway,
you win.
So I tried to lay out a case against spanking, and I'm one of the things is we try very hard not to be black and white, because part of the mommy revolution, part of the thing that we're trying to work against and revolt against. Yes, I know. Is there a camera over here where I can roll my eyes at the host?
You can roll them right here. Because sometimes I can go off camera and then make comments in the whisper.
All right. Anyway, so we try not to say it's all or nothing, this or that. You can only do this thing or that thing, because that's the thing that one of the things we're revolting against at the revolution is this idea that there's a way to be a parent,
right,
and there isn't a way.
Right.
There isn't a way to discipline children. Oh. But so I'm trying to make a case for spanking being the exception rather than the rule of discipline.
Okay.
So that's the case I've laid out, and I've got about 6 reasons why I think spanking is an ineffective form of discipline, and why there are lots of better options. And we've got, some disagreement going on. A couple of our readers have chimed in and said, well, we spank, and here's why, and this is how we find that it's working, and it has been helpful, and it's made our family a more peaceful unit, and that's fine. That's great. That's what we want, is this dialogue about it. But there, so much of Christian parenting literature just assumes that you're going to spank and assumes that it's the godly way to discipline your kids. So I'm trying to provide an alternative view to that by suggesting that it's A, not at all biblically mandated, and B, not as effective as it's often promoted to be.
Would you go as far as to say that there's a detrimental side to it? Like, it's not just that it doesn't work,
well,
so it's that sort of torture argument? Like,
right.
Hey, why torture people? It doesn't work.
Right. Well, I think whether or not there's a detriment, again, I don't know that you can make a blanket statement about that, because depends on how you do it and how often you do it and when you do it and in what context. I mean, to me, it's one of those things. Why would you do it if it's not helpful and effective? Why do it at all when there's lots of other things you can do instead?
So you don't have to argue for its negative.
Right. You don't have to argue against it, because to me, there's not a solid case for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's
a very good dodge. That's an interesting. That's a good. Yeah. A nice workaround.
I'm not trying to be a dodge.
Because I think when you hit your kid to try to get him to do what you want, that's troubling. And I know that people who don't. I've had to spank my children. Because you're out of other options.
Right. Well, that's what. And I say this on the blog that my husband and I are not spankers, but we've each spanked our kids once. Didn't for that reason. I mean, so even
in our occasional spanker. like the occasional smoker.
I'm a one-time spanker. I'm a social spanker.
Social spanker. But on my life insurance, I'll say no. I don't.
And I nearly always wear my seatbelt.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Right. That's
so yeah.
But you're arguing something different, that it's
right.
not an integrated part of your parenting plan to physically.
It's the exception, not the rule.
Right. Fanny.
Right. And I think.
How about a flick? Is that all the same? The flick, the ear pull, the trip.
The knock on the head.
The knock on the head.
The burn with the cigarette. I don't know. I mean, when do you... That's just it. It's like, when do you...
the back of the hand.
That's right.
Well, see, here's...
kick in the gut.
Here's what I wonder about those of us who are the non-spankers. The other dads who get to spank when you're on that car trip, you get to say things like, I'm going to pull this car over, or I'm just going to turn around and start swinging. I don't care who I hit.
That's right. Right? It opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Yeah, what does the dad say? You know what it is? We say, when we get out of the car and go in, you can't go in. Because we were grounding people instead of physical pain people.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, let's just smack the kid and get it over with and move on.
I tell this story about when my daughter was about 3.5 in the middle of winter when we were living in Chicago. She refused to put on socks. And we had to go. Like, I had to get to work. She had to get to the babysitter. We had to leave the house. And she would not put on socks. And if you've ever tried to put socks on somebody who doesn't want socks on, it's pretty impossible. So finally, and it was like 20 minutes of this trying to deal with this child. And I'm trying, okay, well, then you can't do that. I'm trying to take away privileges. I'm trying to smack, whatever I can do. And finally, I said to her, I was even like, you're lucky I don't spank, because right now. And she didn't understand. She was 3. But finally, I just went with natural consequences, and she went outside with her clogs on and no socks. And she goes, I'm not cold at all. Yeah. I'm like, oh. Yeah. But at that point, it's kind of like, you know what? I don't care if your feet turn black and fall off. Then, if that's how you're going to be about it, you little.
If your feet get black and fall off, don't come running.
Don't come running to me. Exactly. Yeah. Well, but so, and I want to be very clear here too that I don't think that people who do spank their children are horrid parents. I don't think that they're bad people, and I don't think that they're necessarily abusive. I think you can be abusive with spanking. You can overdo it, but so I don't mean all this as a judgment against people who do find that to be an effective form of discipline, because every kid is different, and there are some kids who, they need something that's going to sort of pop them back into paying attention.
And not only is every kid different, every parent is different.
Every parent is different from moment to moment. For that matter.
Can't carry that long requirement of consequences.
Right.
Like
it demands
really
a lot.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I sort of wonder, like in brain development world, because I'm not a spanker, but I could argue that when you try to impose consequences on even into adolescence, that the brain of the child can't connect a future event with a present activity in such a way that a consequence works.
Right. Well, and that's why that's what they say, it has to be immediate. And that's one of the reasons that spanking proponents will say it works, because it's right then. There's none of this delayed business. There's none of this, well, now you can't watch TV later, or there's, it's instant. It's an instant consequence for that behavior.
But I would even go as far as to say maybe it's not instantaneous enough, right? You did this thing, you didn't do this thing, and then time moves a minute, 3 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. None of those disciplines to that brain can connect. Like when the kid feels that pain, and now somehow they're supposed to connect that over.
And this and this is the point that I made when I was writing this post. The whole thing was generated by somebody's Facebook status where they talked about how they had taught preschool Sunday school, and one of the little kids prayed for no more spankies with the wooden spoon. Ooh. I mean, and it just broke my heart, this status. And everybody else who commented was like, oh, LOL, oh, isn't that sweet? And I'm like, yes.
What
and
kind
I was
of
like,
masochist do you have on that
well,
blog
and that's
of
what
yours?
I'm thinking. I said on there, I'm like, this is so sad to me. Because here's this little kid who isn't making the connection between my behavior is the thing that needs to change. All this kid knows is that my parents keep hitting me with that wooden spoon. And I would like them not to anymore.
See, now I'm laughing.
See, that is
All
funny.
I know is my parents keep hitting me with that spoon.
Right. But what
I don't want? I don't want those mashed potatoes that you make with that spoon.
Right. But the point that I made is that if you only spank your child for a certain behavior, then maybe they make the connection. If the only time you ever spank them is because they run in the street, or the only time they ever get spanked is when they pinch their baby brother, then maybe they start to go, oh, pinching leads to spanking. But when spanking is used for all sorts of behaviors, in the child's world, all those behaviors come out of a whole different set of things. So there's no connection between doing